Welcome to the Python class again. If you haven't subscribed, I'd like to implore and ask you to please subscribe to this channel. Click on the thumb up button to like the videos, share the videos with others, and also turn on the notification bell. This is a journey we started a few weeks ago, and now we are here where we're talking about texts. And recall that in the previous video, we started looking at a few examples of text, and just in case, just as a refresher, that the way you know that something is a text, string is a text, for instance, is that it's inside a quote. So the quote could be double quote, the quote could be single quote. So if I can say drink equal to water, for instance, and that's a text, it's a string. And we also talked about how we can have escape characters, and we in fact looked at the escape sequence where we want to output a particular character, but because of the nuances in the strings, we are not able to output them. So we cited a few examples of escape characters. And just to begin, I would like to ask you this question. And I don't expect you to answer because I'm going to answer it. But here it is. What do you think the output of this would be? He said, I like honey instead. And as you can see, in fact, I don't even need to ask you, because PyCharm it turns out that PyCharm is already telling me that there's a problem with this. And you could tell that there's a problem with it because we know, like I explained the other time, the same explanation. We start with a double quote and it sees another double quote. Now, if this was a single quote, it would have no problem with it. However, if we begin with a single quote here, it would also expect us to have a single quote here. And so it's a little bit tricky, but these are things that you should try to understand how it works so that you can clearly explain it to someone else, right? And so if you look at this, if you start with a double quote, you have to end with a double quote. However, inside a double quote, you can have a single quote. Similarly, inside a single quote, you can have a double quote, just as we did here. So if I remove this escape sequence, of course, the escape sequence wasn't actually necessary at this point, because inside single quote, which is at the beginning here and at the end here, we can have a double quote, and that works just fine. It works fine until when we introduce double quote to the end of this. So what I mean is this: I can have as many double quotes as I want to have, as long as they are in between this, as long as it starts with a single quote and it ends with a single quote. Python has no problem with that. It will not yell at you. But if I introduce this, there's a problem, because now it's seeing that I started with a single quote and I'm ending with a double quote, and that's something that is wrong. And so if you look at this again, start with a single quote, you have to end with a single quote as well. So a few more things that you would probably also need to take note of is that we can also there are times that we possibly want to output the backslash So say for instance, I'm thinking of an example I can give. So let's say that this is Python, right? And I want to say that new line. So I can say that this, so let's say that I'm writing something. The way to write new line, the way to write a new line in Python is \n, right? Now, I want to actually output backslash, right? But if I have it just like this, and I think I talked about this, what you get is a new line. If you leave your program this way, you get a \n, that's a new line. But that's not what I want. That's not the behavior I want. And in fact, let me just quickly show you. And I know you won't really see it, but that's happening. It's happening there. So let me comment this, and let's output this. You can see that there's, look at the space in between. I want you to know what that new line does. So you can see there's a line here, and then there's another line. So two of it, because by default, Python introduces a new line in between your output and this particular text. So now I want you to see, if I remove this \new line, the escape sequence, I want you to notice, just keep your eye fixed here. That should reduce, it should shrink. And as you can see, we have just one space, which Python has introduced. So I'm going to revert to this, because that's not what we want to do. The question was, how can we then say the way to write a new line in Python is, how do we output this? The simple way to do that would be to introduce one more slash here. And by doing so, it turns out that Python now understands that, okay, we have two backslashes. This is the first one, which is the escape character. And then this will be the next one, which is the actual text, the actual thing I want to print out. And so if we try to run this now, you can see the way to write a new line in Python is /n. So that's something you should take note of. Other than all these things that I'm talking about, you don't have any problem with the things that can go in between the quotes. So for instance, we can have something like, so say I want to string my string format equal to, so say I want to include all these special characters, everything will go in. It has no problem with all this. All these get output. There's no problem with any of those. So this, as long as it remains in the code, you can have all these special characters as well. So let me just print out my string format so you can see that we don't have a problem with that. And look at the output here. And that's what I want to show you in this video. We'll continue dealing with string because there's a lot more to talk about. And one thing that you possibly, I think I have talked about this in one of the videos, but again, let me just talk about it here, is that if you include a number within a string, that makes it a string, not a number. So say, if you say year of birth equal to, and you include quote in that, and then you say 1863. This is a string. This is not a number. Even though year of birth, you would expect it to ordinarily be a number, right? But this is a string now, and you should take note of that. And I mentioned the other time that you also have this backward /T, which is the escape sequence for tab. And let me just give you a demo of how that might work for you. So say, for instance, you want to print out the square of maybe 1 through 5, for instance. And I'm not going to write a complex program. Now let's just say 1 through 3. So I know ahead of time that I can say that number. So let me just have number, and then I do a tab, and then I say square. So I can print again and say what I want to print is 1, for instance. And I would also have a tab and possibly another tab. But the next thing I want to have is the square of 1. And I'm just going to have that in this and do 1 raised to power 2. And of course that should give 1. I'm going to copy this. And let's do for 2. And we have 2 square. Like I said, this of course is not the approach you would take ordinarily. I just don't want to make things overly complicated in this introductory series. So we have 1, and then the square of 1 is 1 squared. 2, the square of 2 squared is 2 squared. 2 is 2 squared. 3, the square of 3 is 3 squared. So let's try to see what we get by printing out this. Let's see the output. As you can see, it's clearly formatted because we have a tab in between. So I'm going to remove this tab so that you can see what actually happens. If I remove that and put a space in there and I run this again, you can see that now it's just the space that we have there. And so that's what tab does. When you think of tab, just think of tab as the normal tab on your Microsoft Office Word document where you are typing your document and you hit the tab button just to make things align properly. And that's why you see this whole thing is properly aligned. And just for you to see again, keep an eye on the gap between R and S. And if I run that again, you can see that there's a much better gap now. And so that's what I want to show you in this video. See you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.